Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We will begin with our prayer to be followed by the national anthem. May we request everyone to put yourselves in the presence of our Almighty God. Let us put ourselves in the presence of God. God Almighty, thank you for bringing us together to celebrate Cebuano culture and heritage through the sharing of our stories. We need this in this time of uncertainty, O God, to remind us of our identity as a people, unique and blessed and proud. This reminder must inspire us that whatever challenges we face, whether unseen, alien, and treacherous, can always be overcome if we are united in working for the present and the future, and for the heritage of our children and community. We pray for our present-day heroes who are fighting against the virus, as well as other threats that besiege us today. For our own people struggling to overcome these threats, and for those who have died, fallen, but never forgotten. Dearest God, heal our land. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa dagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang may di magtitingin. Lumang ang araw ng warhabit pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Maayong hapon mga Cebuanon. Welcome to Gabi sa Kabilin 2022 online activities. This is an engaging space to appreciate and experience Cebu's culture and heritage.
Mayong hapon sa tanan. Heidi Palapar here, GSK Event Director and your moderator for this afternoon's program. Welcome to our first webinar of Gabi sa Kabilin online activities for this year. Daghang salamat sa tanan who has joined us this afternoon from Cebu and other parts of Region 7 and the country, even those outside of the country, and especially to our teachers from DepEd and the private schools. The Gabi sa Kabilin, the Summer Heritage event of Cebu, continues its aim to preserve and promote local culture and heritage through the museums. This year, we have been delayed with our online activities and even in our Gabi sa Kabilin event because aside from the ongoing pandemic, we also experience and continue to experience disasters, especially, of course, with the Super Typhoon Odette last December 2021. But what matters is that we're back. And we have a new theme for this year's GSK, which is Padayon, the Persistence of the Cebuano Amidst Crisis, which highlights why the Cebuano spirit, race, and personality have continued to exist and thrive amidst the many crises and challenges that came his way, even before the time of Lapu-Lapu. The theme also highlights and celebrates local museums, galleries, and cultural sites as treasure troves where one can find proof of Cebuanos' knack for survival and character of resilience, optimism, and ingenuity. This afternoon, our webinar will focus on the Cebuano in times of disasters. Before I introduce our speaker, may I just remind everyone that after the lecture, we have our Q&A or open forum, of course, with trivia where you can win prizes. Also, for those who are here joining us and want to get a certificate of participation, please note that we will post the link and open the evaluation after the webinar and up to midnight later only at 11:59 p.m. to be sure. And so, without much ado, may I introduce our speaker. Dr. Emma Porio is professor of the Department of Sociology and Anthropology of the School of Social Sciences in the Ateneo de Manila University and Science Research Fellow of the Manila Observatory. She is president of the International Sociological Association, or ISA, Clinical or Sociology Division from 2019 to 2023, and of the Asia Pacific Sociological Association from 2022-2023. Professor Porio is editor of the Journal of Frontiers and Sustainable Cities, Frontier in London, principal editor advisor of the Environment and Urbanization of Asia edition, and review editor of the Journal of the Cities of the Global South. Currently, she is project leader and principal investigator of the transdisciplinary action research project Coastal Cities at Risk, Investing in Climate and Disaster Resilience in the Philippines. She co-directs the Master of Disaster Risk and Resilience at the Ateneo de Manila University. Finally, she is the co-chair of the Climate Change Commission's Philippine National Panel of Technical Experts, as well as the Adjunct Research Fellow of the Center for Social Wellbeing Studies in the Institute for Development of Social Intelligence in Sensho University, Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our speaker, Dr. Emma Porio.
Salamat, Heidi. How are you?
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Salamat kaayo nga giimbita ninyo ako dinhi ha. I mean, Cebu is my home. Cebu is my birthplace. And
Wow.
I always say I am what I am because of Cebu. And in fact, trivia lang when I was studying in the US and teaching. And you know how they are sometimes. These people in North America and Europe, they don't know they are being aggressive. And kita naman, di ba? Og di kita gyud ko nun, murag di man ta musulti no, but I remember when I find them very, medyo aggressive na, I always say, don't forget, I come from the island that killed its first tourist. Di ba? Lapu-Lapu killed Magellan. So I always tell people, hindi yan totoo na first circumnavigator si Magellan because he died, he got killed by Lapu-Lapu and Mactan. Anyway, salamat kaayo Heidi for inviting me, and I hope magka-istorya ta na medyo importante sa Cebu. Okay?
We should have included in your introduction, ma'am, that you're Bisda. But anyway, we'll give you the floor, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll see you later, ma'am.
Okay. Ren, can I have my slide? Okay. Good morning, everyone. The title of my presentation is Climate Change and Disaster Preparedness, Cultural Heritage and Community Resilience. The structure of my presentation is part one. I'll talk about heritage or kabilin. And I always say that, in fact, I was asking people when they invited me that they wanted me to talk about resilience. I asked friends of mine at the Cebuano Study Center, and I said, ano ba ang resilience sa Bisaya? And then, they couldn't, right away really say kung ano talaga equivalent. So I told them that if there's no equivalent resilience in Bisaya, then we'll just do the way the Indonesians or the Indians do. So in Indonesia, bureaucracy becomes bureaucracy. Democracy becomes democracy. Anyway, I'm talking about, language is culture. Its identity, its power and place. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, or the anthropologist Sapir and Whorf said that if it's not in the language, then might be it's not in the reality. But I don't believe that because we do have equivalencies of what resilience means. So the structure of my presentation, I'll talk about heritage and the tangible and intangible heritage and how kabilin and resilience in our Cebuano language is really very important in how we survive, we get up after a typhoon and then proceed, so padayon, So I also believe that language basically reflects culture, power, and the resilience of the people. And it is very important in terms of, with all the climate disasters and the climate action that we're doing. So part two will talk about the coastal cities at risk, investing in climate and disaster resilience in the Philippines as an illustrative case of how we're going to, or how we instituted the resilience agenda through transformational action research, through co-production, co-creation, and co-ownership and co-benefits. And then part three, I'll talk about the prospects for climate resilient, inclusive development in our coastal cities. And as I was saying before, for me, resilience is caring for our common home. It is pag-amping, paano atimanon, pagmahal, pagpangga sa atong mahal o kinaiyahan nato nga katabang nato kung may mga delubyo or mga baha. So I believe resilience is stewardship, it's ownership and identity. So let me start basically by starting with UNESCO's definition of intangible heritage. So there's tangible or the material heritage, so buildings, things that you can touch and you can see. But there's the intangible heritage, are those the oral traditions and expressions, our proverbs, riddles, tales, legends. I mean, I will not read that because you can see that, and I'll share basically with the organizers my PowerPoint. So the performing arts, our social practices, rituals, and festive events. So for example, fiestas. People don't realize that fiestas are very important in solidarity, coming together, celebrating. Like for example, most of the fiestas are in May. It's celebrating, harvest, celebrating the end of the summer season. Like so, and then knowledge and practices concerning nature and the universe. So for example, kanang tabi-tabi nato. It's really, I remembered I was in Bali. I was visiting one of my advisee, and I was surprised when he entered a small forest. He said, tabi, tabi. And I said, huh, you also do that? He says, yes, because, the trees have spirits. The environment have spirits. They too. So, for example, tabi, tabi. We have many practices that I think really support our way of life, our resilient way of life, and also traditional craftsmanship. I'm remembering Roberto Bobby Abotes when he came to Ateneo to give a keynote speech. He was talking about the big bogsai philosophy. He says that we are an island economy. We should have the bogsai. Di ba? The bogsai, yung paddle. It powers us to where we want to go. So he thinks that we, people from the Visayas, we should, think of the bugsay at the baroto that really powers us. In fact, one of the historians, si William Henry Scott, was saying that water connects us Cebuanos. It's only when we have the airplane and all this land-based transportation that we have stopped relying on water-based transportation. So traditional craftsmanship. So there's the boat, and then the ukulele. And the ukulele really reflects our love for music and how we use songs and music as a way na makapahungaw bata and also sa atong pagbati, no? So the word resilience comes from the Latin word resil, which is after a shock, like elastico, no? When you stretch it, it will bounce back and retain its original form, pareho sa elastico. But Maniena, he basically says that resilience is to be able to bounce forward better. And Stephen Gray of Harvard University, he was lecturing with us on engineering equitable resilience. He says that after a shock, like a bagyo, like Odette, we should be able to get up, bounce back together. It's very important that we work together to recover and to resilience. So, in fact, I was making a survey about, what is the term really. I was making a survey, and they were saying that resilience, they think of, bangon sa pagbangon, or bangon para makapadayon. And also they're talking, but for me really, supporting resilience or sa pagpadayon is really our of reciprocity, our trust networks, our collaborative, magtinabangay, di ba? I mean, I remember after Odette, I went to Cebu, and the principal in National High School, where I was born, he was saying that, abi ni mo day, maayo nga gravity-fed ang atong tubig. So we were not dependent on electricity. So they brought the water to sa taga-syudad. Sabi niya, kaluoy kain nila, wala sila tubig. So part of, really being resilient is really to collaborate, to work together with others, so that in times of, disaster, we should be able to support each other. So this is the Maniana framework of resilience. Bounce forward together. And if you look there, if you look at the framework, you will see that the green one basically shows that the control of any recovery or disaster response should be step number one, should be in the control of the local people. Whereas downstairs, you can see that, a not so resilient community, the response or the recovery is dominated by external people. So basically what Maniana is saying, that, working together and preparing and basically mobilizing all the tangible and intangible heritage, material and immaterial capacities, our spirituality, our capacity to say, sige, nahitabo naman gina, padayon ta, ganon. So really what Maniana is saying is that, we should not be reactive but be proactive. So ako ning survey sa, I was surveying the 3 flood basins in Metro Manila, and I just asked them, kinsa may natabang ninyo sa panahon sa baha? Kinsa diin mo magkuha og pagkaon, tubig, or pagbantay sa inyong balay o medisina before the Ondoy and a series of climate disasters? Ang informal sector, yung informal settlements, really relied heavily on their bonding capital. What is bonding capital? It's help from neighbors, relatives, friends. Whereas there are 3 kinds of capital really. Bonding capital is capital among, trust among our friends, among same people, no, that we see each other in the community or connected to, but they're connected to us, But bridging capital are those people that, like NGOs, people who are different from us, like they are different professionally, and basically they provide help. Like, for example, after Yolanda, after Ondoy, NGOs will come there. And then linking capital is our links to the government, like that. And what I found in Metro Manila is that before Ondoy, a lot of the informal settlements relied very, heavily on each other. But after Ondoy, as you can see here, after Ondoy, a lot, when we ask them again, whom do you ask for help? There's the dominance of the barangay tano, the NGOs, and like that, and bonding capital, meaning reliance among each other, wala na. So I want to talk about it later, but really, very much when we say reciprocal relationship, pagtinabangay sa neighbors, pagtinabangay sa, so I will talk about it, how important social capital and trust networks are. Whom do you trust, in times of disaster or after disaster? So these are, for me, sample illustrations of Cebuano intangible heritage. So, for example, when you say intangible heritage, but really palpable practice. Now, for example, maingon ta, bisan hinay, basta kanunay, sige lang good, padayon ta bisag unsa kalisod. So ang kabilin, ampingan nato, atong atimanon, padayonon nato ang mga maayong binuhatan o batasan, di ba? Magtidamangay, matigtanabangon ka sa so solid gyud ta, di ba sabi na, O solid gyud ta bay ha, brad or sis, suporta gyud kita, di ba? Incidentally, people think of bay. Actually, bay is a word used also in Indonesia and other parts, which means brother. It's a Malayan word which means brother. So also yung positiveness na sabi nila, for example, kinahanglan andam kita pirmi. Ug unsay mahitabo maka-survive kita. Okay? So those kinds of really feed on what I call solidarity or sharing economy. The idea that we share a space, we share a place, but we also share our destinies, what we do. So I really believe that reciprocity, trust network, social capital, help and support in times of need, and spiritually, it's also mobilized in resource mobilization. For example, sabi nila, gabaan, merisi. Meaning, we see that when there's an imbalance, something bad will come to you. So there is this control of spiritual. So, in fact, when you say, kinahanglan magtinabang nga kita sa panahon sa kalisod o sa panahon sa nga maayo. So, diba, for example, like bagyo ang death, no? Ang tubig, tubig, ang pagkaon. So, for example, some of my friends asked me, if we can mobilize yung for generator, flashlight, all those things. So I really think that in times of bagyo, mga climate disasters, it's called upon our networks of supporting each other. And I think that's part of our heritage as a people. So as I was saying earlier, the island economy is really very reflected in when Bobby Abote said that the Bugsay philosophy should, allow us to survive, to be directive in terms of where we're going. So focus, I would say that really in all these relations, like in Odette, I asked an LGU in Manila and I said, pwede bang tabangan ninyo ang Odette sa Odette ang Cebu? Abi ni mo kasi ang sulti, Ma'am Emma, may problema sa kwarta ang Cebu. Ang problema ninyo politika. So anyway, that's something we should be able to think, because I also believe that politics can be mobilized in a very positive and convergent manner, but I can talk about that later. Anyway, I just want to remind you, why is it important that we should talk about resilience? Why is it important that we have to talk about mobilizing our tangible and intangible heritage in order to survive the climate impact drivers and like, for example, typhoon, we call them now climate impact drivers. Because if you look at that, you look at the Human Development Report, he's saying that we're very much living in an imbalanced world. They're saying that at the rate we are consuming and extracting the Earth's resources, the scientists said, we need 3 Earths in order to sustain at the way we are consuming the food systems, energy, water, and the like. I was telling just somebody that, water insecurity, with our water insecurity, water will be the next goal. We've been saying like that. So ito yung sa, ipakita ko lang sa inyo yung, short-term and medium-long-term global risk and severity in 22, released by the World Economic Forum. And you can see that the first 3 in the, is really the extreme events, livelihood crisis, and climate action failure. So really, you have to pay attention to it, that climate, livelihood, and our action is really central in terms of defining our resilience, and also because these are where the risks are coming from. Okay, so this is the map. I'm sure this is familiar to you. This is the map of the sea level rise. If you kanang pagtaas sa dagat, you will see that, with the 1 meter rise in sea level projected, it will affect 64 and 81 provinces, covering at least 703 out of the 1,610 municipalities. So really, ang pagtaas sa dagat, I think we don't have to talk about it. In Cebu, there's already saltwater intrusion in some areas. And in some areas, I remember I went to, I think, the Cabahog Elementary School in Mandawi. I saw that the children, ang ilang magtaob na gani, ang tubig maabot sa ilang tuhod, itungtong nila ang ilang mga kagamitan dito sa table. So I think it's very real to us, ang sea level rise. And then also the extreme events, like for example sa Odette. Odette nag-intensify ang ano niya, ang speed niya, yung dool na sa kuan ka ng paglandfall na. For example, ang Agaton, kasama ka bati ng nga og Abril init man kaay na, wa man ay bagyo. Ang atong mga bagyo before from June to November or December lang. Pero karon nga may bagyo ta December, may bagyo ta sa Enero. Karon, I mean, this is April, may bagyo ka sa Agaton. And if you look at Agaton, I think around more than almost 170 died from the landslides. It's because na sigig ulan ni before, so nahumok ang yuta. Same thing with Odette. Ang Odette, I think in some areas, sigig biyo-biyo ang kusog nga hangin for 6 to 10 hours. So sometimes it's the duration and the intensity of the wind that really determines how much damage you'll have. So this is the map of the projected map of flooding in Metro Manila. You will see there that the coastal inundation could reach 15 kilometers. Of course, in Cebu, gamay ra kay bungtod naman ta, gamay ra man ang atong patag, whereas Manila is flat. That's why ang inland intrusion with the water, the floods, goes farther. So, but it is something like, tanaw ni mo din ha sa kanang mag-cross gani ka mo adto na kagmaktan, di ba? Kanang mga balay din ha sa kuan, ang igtaob maabot naman sa ilang kuan, nataran og sa ilang floor sometimes. So, it's real, okay? But ang tawag dyan, sabi niya, slow onset, like a drought, that's a slow onset. Whereas floods and bagyo, it's called rapid onset. Okay, so ito, I think I don't have to give you that. I wrote an article on drought and urbanization in the Philippines together with other Manila Observatory climate scientists, and we took Metro Manila, Iloilo, and Cebu as a case studies. Of course, we don't need studies to tell us na problema gyud ang atong tubig sa Cebu, di ba? So as I always say, our urban and rural water imaginaries, either too much, you have flooding, or you have El Nino and you have too little. So I will now move on to showing to you in my project, Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, as you notice, investing in climate and disaster resilience. For me, everything that we do now is an investment to be sustainable, to be resilient. But I always say, you cannot sustain something that's not resilient, that's not able to get up and resume the normal order after a shock, like after Odette. Like if you look at Odette, how many months you're able to recover in some of the basic services. So that's why we say bounce forward together. And I really believe that resilience is everybody's work. Resilience is an everyday habit. It's not lang na kung abot ang bagyo, maghanda ka diyan. Okay? So, Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines is a consortium of resilient cities. So, I included basically Metro Manila, Naga, and Metro Cebu. So, if you notice, Metro Iloilo. I hope in this round, Cebu can be one of the part of the resilient cities. I hope some people would want to work with us in terms of trying towards resiliency and sustainability. So this is our strategy. We think that to strengthen the nests of resilience, you have to work together. To institutionalize the resilience agenda through transdisciplinary action research, through scientific tools, partnerships, networks, and coalitions. As I said, it's a work, everybody. It's that we have to be collaborative. So you can see there that at the local, we work with local universities, LGUs, resilience councils. Like now here, I'm in Bataan. We just had a meeting with the Bataan Resilience Council and the Bataan private sector. And then we also work with the National Resilience Council, with the OCD and the RNC, and then of course we look at the region. We work at the regional level, and then of course at the global level with the UNDRR and the like. This is an example of what we've done. We believe that, to work towards resilience, first basically you have to look at how is the city at risk to flooding, to storm surge, vulnerability, and like this one we did this during the height of COVID. We look at the distribution of the COVID incidents, and we found out that the distribution of COVID incidents very much correlated with the level of vulnerability of the different barangays. Okay, so so we also believe that we have to change our way of working now. We have to be transdisciplinary, and I always tell my scientists, it's time that we have to produce doable and actionable science. And to do this, we follow 3 principles. One, we have to co-produce the knowledge with our stakeholders. So when we say, how do we understand risk? So of course, there's a scientific formula. Risk is a function of hazard, exposure, vulnerability, overcapacity equals resilience. But then that's a scientific. How that is understood by the people on the ground is quite different. How they are it is experienced. So number 2, if we do co-production and co-generation analysis of stakeholders, we create our own capacities as scientists and practitioners in terms of trying to translate and to consume the scientific knowledge and apply it in our work. And if we do these 2 principles, we will co-own the project, the program, or the endeavor, or the engagement, and we will benefit together. Okay, so, and we also believe that we have to be very clear if we have to really reach the impacts that we want to see. Then we have to be clear about what is the enabling context at the bottom, who are the people that will help us with their skills, what is the output, what's the outcome, and I will not know that because I don't have much time. That's the same, basically in terms of theories of change. So what did we learn? What did we learn in terms of our resilience in coastal cities? We learned that we have to understand that risk is contextually driven and they are evolving. So, for example, I was just telling somebody that, for example, the Baguio Odette, it did not hit uniformly in the Visayas. It was uneven, in fact. So that's why the different contexts and the evolution of the risk are very much determined locally. Number 2, so given this, we have to produce really the climate data, as well as we have to look at how the drivers of risk, they are really affecting the people on the ground. So for example, one of the studies that we did is really the air quality, the street, mga osok, PM 2.5, no, or the black carbon. Di ba, og mo gawas ka dito sa traffic, uli nimo kanang imong ilong kuan na daghan og dirt, no, so itom na imong kuan. So that's black carbon, no. And basically we found that our air quality scientists at Manila Observatory have established the metrics. For example, PM 2.5 in Katipunan is very high, could reach sometimes up to 50 to 70, but the WHO standard is only up to 10. So you can just see how polluted is our environment, but because you don't see it, then you don't think it's really dangerous. In fact, the first time I was seeing the data from the Malay Observatory, I told the air quality scientists, this is a hidden disaster. We don't see it, but it's killing us softly. And in fact, when we were doing an ethnography among the street-based populations, street children, the vendors, and the jeepney drivers, they think, nagkakasakit ka lang ka, mahina ang baga mo, kulang ka sa diskarte. And in fact, when we told the jeepney drivers that you are 4 times exposed to pollution and to the PM2.5, and therefore we were showing them, how much it has, increase in palpitation, increase in high blood pressure, increase in heart problems and COPD. They were not worried about it. They think it's just normal for their job. What they were worried was that they will lose their livelihood because of the jeepney modernization. And then also among the street vendors, they will not admit that they are, there's have breathing, dirty air, because if they will admit na alam namin yun, then the police will say, oh, bakit nandito ka pa? Bakit nga na, kung alam mo na, masama yun sa katawan mo or the like, okay? So, basically what we're saying is that we have to understand the context of the risk, whether it's a risk of air pollution or the flood risk and like. We have to look at it basically in a very contextualized manner. And then so also we believe that as university scientists and researchers, our job is to produce the science and tools, and we but put it in the at the disposal of the local governments in terms of how we can be able to devise different tools to respond to the incoming shocks and like so. And also that we believe that we have to advance in knowledge such that the governance system must be subject to, or at least understand that risk governance systems must really be understood risk, so that you can deliver support to those who are most affected very much. And then so we also basically we think that we should innovate for transformational adaptive resilience. I really believe that we have to innovate of systems that will transform the way we do things. So, for example, when we're saying that we should, the science that we produce, it should inform decision-making platforms with data and other models and information that will inform local local actors. So, for example, what we did when we did the CIDRA, the climate and disaster risk assessment, it should be able to update the local climate adaptation plan, update the city land use plan, update the city development plan, and then also it should feed into the executive legislative agenda, the annual investment plan, and the programs and policies and programs and activities. So we believe that we have to put together really the science and basically the implications for action. So, for example, we believe that we have to understand the climate and disaster risk. It should be informed with the development planning. Our development planning should be risk informed. It should be resilience driven. I will not go into detail that because I don't have much time. So when we say innovations for incremental adaptive resilience, so for example, we installed solar powered potable water system in some informal systems, because do you know that many people are killed from contaminated water or not so potable water than from disaster. So but really water is really life, and so that's why we installed solar powered potable water system in some of the informal settlements. We also looked at art strategic pathway for risk and resilience communication. We find out that art and some methods that they have can communicate more efficiently, because I think as I was telling the group this morning, I said we have to learn to translate and communicate risk according to their level of action. Okay, but these things are just incremental. What we need is really So sorry, we have community-based as for resilience, and we also mobilize gender and resilience in Iloilo City. And but really, what we think is that we need innovations that really reorganize the system to become better, more efficient. And as I always tell people, we should follow the Pareto principle: 20% input, 80% output. Because if you are system, strategically and systematically organizing your inputs, then you should be able to have higher output. So what did we learn in sicar? We find that leadership that believes in evidence-based decision making towards resilience to climate change and disasters really is very important. Community resilience is premised on local governments and cities that are really resilient in their thinking and not reactive and really proactive. And also we learned that we have to partner with the private sector. Partnerships are very important because they should invest in making communities more able and capable to respond when shocks or typhoons arrive. We also believe that we should institutionalize innovative tools and methods. It should be part, when we say gender has to be mainstream, meaning to say that, the investments in gender and development should really affect, I will show you later, the decision making in human development and other sectors of the government. Also, we've learned that we have to learn new ways of doing things. You have to mentor and to coach, necessary in order to develop resilience champions among decision makers, bureaucracy, and practitioners. But what were our challenge? Our challenge basically is that risk is very intersectionally related, and also, as I said earlier, we have to work transdisciplinary. um, we cannot be working in our own disciplines, but we have to work with other disciplines as well, with decision makers, sectors, and the like. But the academe is very disciplinary, and the national local governments are very sectoral. So we really have to work as a system. We have to surmount that. Also, we learned that there has to be vertical coherence between national and local policies. Sometimes our translation or how we interpret, how we implement national policies finds, you know, very much many challenges at the local level. Also, we believe that to sustain resilience investments, it requires that there has to be institutionalization of proposed and ongoing climate actions. And more importantly, we have to work together. Public-private partnerships, with the private sector, LGUs, civil society, community-based organizations, for resilience to be scaffolded by new and adaptive modalities, mechanisms, and instruments. So this is, I will show you. So um, this is it doesn't, before it will, this is the whole organizational chart, and and you'll see our we basically produce three city resilience plans. We also have 20 resilience innovation reports. Anyway, we produced 221 resilience champions and leaders. We also had 16 cross-sectoral transfer interns. We have 14 Master of Disaster Risk and Resilience graduates for 2 years. And then we also have advances from our multi-stakeholder, public and private partnerships anchored in the city resilience councils. And then also we have many models. You just look at our website and you'll see. So I really said that for a coastal community economy like our coasts, we have to be integrated, multi-scalar in our approaches to risk governance and resilience. If you look here, you will see that I plotted the initiatives for resilience at the household level, community level, commercial, industrial, and then this local government unit, the city. You will see that they have so many innovations, clean green of innovations, new technologies, and the like, so many, but their efforts are not connected. Um, medyo kulang pa ng konting coordination na magka-connecta talaga ang mga efforts at the household family level, the efforts at the community level, and then the efforts at the other barangays and the whole city. So I really believe that we have to be, we have to establish coherence. Kailangan magkasinabot parang ang structural and non-structural mechanisms for adaptation. Also, we believe that kailangan may resilience framework ang planning so that ang interaction nila of the different sectors, for example, the gender and development, the GAD group, they have 5%. And then the DRM 5%. And I was telling them that, your clientele is the same, the informal settlement. So dapat magkita kayo. You don't have to your budget, but really dapat in the implementation level, you are connected, you are collaborating so that your inputs becomes more. When I said, 20% input, 80% output. Kasi nagkauban na mo incrementally and synergistically, you're putting your inputs together, okay? And so the last thing that I'd like to say is that when we design programs and projects, you should always think of this, what I call the 3 Gs in social development: gender, male or female, or third, LGBTQI, and then generation, elderly and the children, and then social geographies. What are the social geographies of a place that you should think? What is the political geography of the place? What is the economic geography? What is the social geography? And then what is the cultural geography? If you take that into consideration, then you'll be able to be more proactive and more responsive. And if you engage those groups of people in terms of resilience building. So again, let me close in terms of resilience. As I said earlier, what is resilience? For me, in Cebuano, is amping. Padayono nato ang atong maayong binuhatan. So, amping is a word. I really like this word amping kasi when you say, like sa Tagalog yung ka, o ingat ha, pero kitang masibaw na lang, amping. Amping means you value that, and therefore you must take care, you must nurture it. And that is how we should look at the environment. The environment and the ecosystem gives us all the ecosystem services, water, clean air, and the like. So, ampingon nato. So, kabahagi na sa kabili nato, ampingan nato, and then we should be able to work together in terms and working towards resilient and sustainable ways of doing things. So, I would like to say about, we have to think of solidarity economy at the micro level, at the community, and on macro level. I think in my study of social capital, I noticed that we trust people whom we only know. And in fact, I made a study after Yolanda in Samar. In Samar, I surveyed 11 municipalities, and I just asked them, whom do you trust? Again, the same thing I did. Whom do you trust when it comes to looking for food, looking for medicines, and the like? And I found, very interesting, I found that those households and those communities that has a high level of trust of their health system had also a high level of health status. I mean, that's very common sense, so to speak. Now, if you trust the midwife, you trust the doctor, you will patronize and you'll believe in him, and you will follow what the health officials are saying. So I really believe that trust is very important in terms of making systems work. I really believe that reciprocity, trust networks, it supports collaborative endeavor. And I always say that, mutually constituted respect, dignity, and well-being of people community, society, government, and environment and ecosystem. So I feel that, ampinga nato kay kahabahagi ni sa atong kabilin ang atong ang atong kinaihan pag mutabang ta og na ay, for example sa Udet o nitabang tung taga North whether kasi wa man sila kaayo maig-i sa Udet. So ang pagtinabangay and also being connected is very important in terms of promoting resilience. And also we have to value. I really believe that we have to value our place. We have to love our place. And I think we have to work more on that. So I like this quote, Father Jet Bellerin, who was our former president and the project holder of SICAR. He was saying that, we have to support in building our common future, our common home. And he said that we must care for some space that belongs to everyone, not just yourself, not just your own space. So for example, I was giving this talk to the Oceania group, and I was telling them that, we are island economies. And I told them, our coastline is our lifeline. I believe that where nature thrives, people survive and thrive. So I think resilience means restoring the balance between ecology, ecosystems, and people. Okay, I was listening to one of the private sector, and he said, "People, planet, and profit." And I said, "People, planet, and prosperity, shared prosperity. Hindi lang profit, but really, if everyone profits, there is a shared prosperity." Okay, so I'm very with the mangroves because mangroves is a great carbon sink. Not so many people that the mangroves and the ecosystem kana bang mga brackish water there and all the silt there, they are more efficient in absorbing carbon. And you have to remember, we have 11,000 square kilometers of coastline. But these coastlines are threatened by the privatization of our upland commons, subdivisions. We're building in, upland areas. I remember I was telling a student of mine who was from Cebu. And then I said, "Oh, where do you live?" He said, "Oh, sa Santo Niño, pero nibalhin mo nga to sa subdivision. I will not mention the subdivision sa itaas sa bukid." Then I said to him, "Ha? Kamo na responsable na anong nabahaan namin, no?" Sabi ko, "Pinadto kana dihang labang kanang among lugar sa Labango di man nabahaan, pero karon baha na after all the development the uplands." And then he says to me, "Ay kasi ma'am, ang kuan gud lisod magog kaayo og kuanon gyud ang proper drainage system." Ingon ko sa iya, "Oy, okay lang ninyo nga di mo gasto nya kami may mabahaan." So we have to be responsible. We just don't think na gusto kong himuon ni kay private property makahimo ko, but you have to think unsa may resulta sa imong gihimo sa imong mga silingan sa down nga to sa downstream. Just because you are in the upstream, you don't know that downstream na apektuhan sa imong kuan. So the privatization of upland and coastal commons, for example, the resorts. After that, I came home and I found out na my beach house in kilometer 49 na kuan na sira ang ground floor. Kay ingon sa akong caretaker, 5 meters kuno ang storm surge. 5 meters, di pa taas kayo. So nasira ng ground floor, naguba ning ang bongbong. So nakita na ako ang akong silingan na resort. Instead kami, naghatag mig 1 meter easement. Siya, nidikit pa sa ako. So I said to him, "My God, why they do not follow rules?" So we have to be responsible in utilizing the commons. So in fact, because of what my neighbor did, hindi nila makaagi ang mga maningisda. And I think that situation is not exceptional to, I think that's happening all over the country, that kanang mga mangingisda di na makaagi kay gikural na ang mga common domain. Dapat kanang mga baybayon common domain na siya, no? So also I was explaining somebody na sa amo ang pangalan sa mga kanipaan o kapagatpatan katunggan. Because what is katunggan? Katungugan. Meaning to say, kanang tungog nga gamito niyo paghimog tuba comes from one species of mangrove. Okay? But I noticed that what people have done, ang daming seawall, river walls, like for example, I saw in one of my trips to northern Cebu, ang ano ng river wall, pero gikural nila ang kanipaan and then dili na makasugod ang brackish water, so mamatay ginagyod. So that's an example of maladaptation. This is what I'm saying, that we have to live with nature. We have to realize that, if nature survives or mangrove system survives and thrives, then our livelihood basis also thrives. Okay. I like this. This is in Iloilo, and he's saying that, the character of the people, you look at the character, kabakod, paghiusa, katawhay, pag-intindi. So these are the character, and this is part of the intangible heritage I was telling you about. Our ways, our traditions, our beliefs, our spirituality is part of constituting community resilience. So this is the resilience model that we made in the National Resilience Council. We believe that to be resilient, first, the leadership and governance must believe in resilience. We must be committed and have the competencies. It must empower its stakeholders and must have an integrated development planning, implementation, and evaluation. If he has that, then the 4 pillars of resilience among the LGU system: human development, meaning to say you have resilient systems of health, education, and social protection; sustainable local economy, meaning to say your livelihoods, you just don't take care of the big businesses, but also the small enterprises; and then the infrastructure, your housing is not on the hindi ba na yung bahaan nga lugar, in Metro Manila. I found that they relocated the informal settlers in lands that are not very desirable. That's why it's affordable. So, for example, I went to one of the relocation sites in Ondoy. The flood went up to the roof, and I thought that they would do something because that's what 2009. But then in Ulysses, mas grabe pa. These people came from Pasig River, so they were saying parang from the frying pan to the fire, and so you also take care of the environmental sustainability. You must have healthy ecosystems. You must have social ecological protection systems and pollution management. Okay, if you do that, then you will reduce damages and losses from typhoon like that. Okay, this is an example of the application of this resilience scorecard in a barangay. I really believe that we have to work at the barangay level in terms of making sure that everybody, from environment to social protection to education, must be working together, not to be reactive, but proactive and working together. So this is an example. That one is in Muntinlupa, but this one is abroad in terms of we have to design the built heritage and we transform them that they are, we have resilient housing and also our health. So we really have to reinvent and redesign our existing ways of doing so that we can become more resilient. So let me close by saying that, kabilin para tayo makapadayon. Malig-on ta nga makapadayon. Sumubangon ka, hapak ni Odette, hapla ka, bangon ka para makapadayon. But to do that, we have to work together, okay? That's why I'm saying, so what is kabilin for in supporting community resilience? Unsa ang atong ampingan, di ba? So each, of you in the community, you have to look at both the tangible and intangible heritage, unsa mga kabilin, and of course, unsa nay when we say nganong ampingan man nato para ang atong mga anak, mga apo ug sunod na henerasyon naapa sila taas ay tubig, naa sila kuan na healthy mga mangroves we're in, it's really important for our marine-based food system and the like. So I think I will basically just refresh what I said earlier. What is the kabilin? So it's our identity, our place, and social location. It's also our security. Like I here in this afternoon, somebody asked me, "Ma'am, taga diin, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Cebu." "Ah, Bisaya da ka?" "Oo." May diyan ka ma-accent ka. Oh, of course. Everyone has an accent. But I don't like it na in Metro Manila, kung Bisaya ka, parang lower ka. Parang I always say, the center inferiorizing the margins. So I think we have to talk about, relationships. Imperial Manila tries to, try to inferiorize the countryside, but they don't mean it. It's just that they're used to, they think they are the center. But, as you say in Odette, Metro Manila was suffered very much because the supply of goods, the supply of fruits and vegetables was very hard in getting. So we really have to think of interconnectedness of our lives, cities and rural hinterlands and vice versa. So we must be collaborative. We must own our enterprises. We must be responsible of the resources or stewardship. We must be practice the transdisciplinarity, co-production, co-creation, and co-ownership, and we must be transformative in the ways. So there has to be a consciousness that we are together. That's why I always subscribe to the solidarity economy. But we must be conscious of the power relations in terms of mobilizing the common good. Ano bang common good na yan? If some people are only benefited, but the others are not, then you have to think, common good ba yan? And how are you privatizing some common good? So, okay. So, we really, I think, in closing, I will say, we must care. We must amping what is so important to us in thriving and surviving. Like, for example, I was telling somebody, we must adopt a river. Like in New Zealand, they have declared that the river has rights. So it has a right to reject all the pollution like that. So we have to be supportive and connected to our place and the ecosystems, and we must guard them and we must amping them. So I always say, what is disaster preparedness? Disaster preparedness means that when the typhoon hits, you have food, you have water, you have energy. Nakita naman niyo sa Odette, kanang tatlo, naku ana. So, I always think that, like for example, when there's a bagyo, people will always say, the preparation consists always of the plastic bag with rice, with like that. I think we have become resilient when we do not, the government does not anymore provide the food. The household or family should be able to provide, what he has need for that day. Like I remember when I was small, when there's a bagyo and then there will be some buckwheat from the coast sa Kapilya, and my father would tell my mother, o magdala tag magpagaon nga to. Then my mother said, ngano man, ugwa day bagyo, di sila kapaniod to, di sila kon hapon. So that's something na, whether bagyo or not, you must have food. Food is very important, and it tells you that food is very important to survival. So disaster preparedness is really that. It's preparing every day what are the basic needs. And I think we have to collaborate with each other. And especially, now I'm talking about, climate justice. I always say that, the earth is heating because of all the greenhouse gas emissions. But the poor have the least accountability. They did not emit so much gases, like that, the GSGs. So I think we must work that there is climate justice such that, we should organize our systems to be resilience driven. And we must really, the final note when I said that, it's everyone's mission to be resilient. So if you look at it, disaster resilience is really meaning to say that we've reduced our poverty, our Government and state institutions are strong. Our disaster risk reduction is very capable in reducing the vulnerabilities of the place, and our response and our climate adaptation is very towards resilience. Okay, so this is, you can look at our website. There's www.observatory.ph, and then this resilience toolkit.ph. I really would like you to look at it because you have many tools there. And then I really believe this. This is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you go far and farther, go together. I really think that we have to work together if we have to preserve our kabilin and all that. So the IPR of this research belongs to the coastal cities. So you can, use any of my research here, but you must just acknowledge us. Thank you very much. Okay.
Daghang salamat, Ma'am Emma.
Sorry, nataasan man ko. I meant to speak only for 30 minutes because sobra naman noon.
No
Sorry.
worries, Ma'am. But we're open out with our open. We're ready for our open forum. We're ready to take in
Naapay
questions.
mga pangutana? Wala naman.
Yes, ma'am. We'll begin with our first question. Can we show? This comes from Mr. Charles C. And he's asking, Ma'am, how effective are our government's current efforts in managing disaster risks?
I will say, I sit in the disaster preparedness pillar and the Office of Civil Defense and the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. I really think that still, in general, the way we've designed we're still very much reactive. When I say that disaster preparedness is an everyday work, diba? But then, even kita, diba, asa man imong go bag, diba? You're supposed to have a go bag. But you look at so many households. So at the household level, we ourselves are not doing it. And also when you think about government, I always say, government cannot do it. We have to help each other. And wala, dyan pa lang sa disaster response, medyo maghanda lang tayo pag darating ang bagyo, di ba? Parang, and then ang atong paghanda, kanang mga relief goods na ay kuan, na ay sardinas, na ay noodles, na ay rice, no? And I always tell people, we should not eat so much rice because rice is water intensive, di ba? Irrigation. We should go back to mais because it has more high fiber and the high and glycemic index is not as high. So eating rice is responsible for the high diabetes incidence in the Philippines. So, yeah, Charles, in Galingpo, where I'm part, there are several excellent LGUs who's really resilience driven. Like I'm here in Bataan. Ang galing ng resilience planning nila. They aim to be number one. So, in the Human Development Index, they want to be number one. So, really, if you look at them, in their planning, they're taking into consideration, they are aware that there are many migrants coming in because of the jobs here. Therefore, they must prepare their housing. We must add the services. So, Charles, there are many. Actually, you can Google the Galingpook website. We have been awarding local governments who has been excellent. But from one administration to the other, sometimes what one mayor does very well, pag the next dili masundan. That's why I was saying earlier nga, kuan ka na ganing leadership must be evidence based, and leadership must believe that we can protect the lives of our people by making their places secure, which means to say, dini mo na kuan ka na ganing magbabalay, kuan ka diag permit na mo obstruct sa water flow, di ba? What I'm saying is, there are enough. I always say in Galingpok, if only 50% of the local governments are galing sila na puok, the will be different. So, in response to your charge, I would say, I would say maybe mga 1/3 of the LGUs are quite good prepared, but then I think the 2/3 is also because some, especially those in 4th, 5th, 6th class municipalities, wala man gani sila, di man sila maka-afford of having a DRR person good that. So uneven, Charles, I was giving a presentation to the International Climate Change Network, in it was presided by Canada, and other presenters were so I basically told them Philippines is policy rich but implementation challenge. But I said there are opportunities with the Mandanas ruling. It will add 40% more to the local budget. But I also believe in the saying, "Siya mi preparada." The fortune favors the prepared. If you're prepared, you'll be able to absorb the additional resources and be able to strategically and systematically invest. So, this is a long, Charles, thank you for the question. Si Charles is one of the coordinator of the USC Carolinian Worldwide Network. So, mag-istorya na lang ta, Charles, I will tell you. But
Thank you for the question, Mr. Charles. Ma'am, this is just to follow up on the question, no, and topic. Uh, why is it, ma'am, that it's ironic, and this is actually based on our experience in Cebu. Why is it that to think we are already a city, no, and we think of ourselves as progressive, and yet when disasters strike us, a city such as Cebu does not know still how to uh, even react, ha? Reactionary pa ganito imong ingon, ma'am. Even react to a disaster. What is it? Does this
I don't
mean
know,
that
but I was monitoring the number of fires during Odette, no? I mean, my God, why will you throw a cigarette butt when you know people nag-iimbak ng gasoline, di ba? Why are you having firecrackers during New Year? So, I mean, it's really accountability and responsibility. And also really strict vigilance of the local tanos. But then they also say, ay, nakuan man po sila, na biktima man sila, so di na sila kahimos ilang trabaho. But, I was struck, I was reading the newspapers, and I was struck that in Mandawi, I think after a week or two, they were able to clear all the debris. It's because every barangay took care of it. That's why ako mo, tuon na dyan ko, kada barangay, kada sitio, kada purok should take care. And I think, for me, mobilization yan, leadership, and ganon. So, I think, I think learning, I feel, we have not learned the lesson of roping. I mean, in roping, ay nakita na ako nga, daghan ka nitabang, pero ang roping, di man ingon kadugay, di ba? Ang hangin sa roping, dili kasing dugay sa Odette, di ba? And also, I really think, when I was asking Father Jet, the executive director of Manila Observatory, I said, what is the science of intensifying wind speed as it approaches land? Sabi niya, well, we know that warm water powers. But then I said, same thing. Umiinit ng mga siyudad natin dahil simento tatanan. Di pa ma-absorb ang water. Kaya kuan. So, mangutana ka nga man, di ba? Mga bright man kaayo ang tata, Heidi, no? Di ba?
Lagi, ma'am.
Moingon man na nga, hawd kita mga Cebu, nga nung nahapla man tawa matakabangon dayon. And, nga nung,
I really
think,
thought, Sadbab, we had a plan to begin with. Yeah,
Oh.
it would have made lives easier ba kanang for us to rise up easily. Unya wa gyud ambot lang, ma'am. It took us
pero
time.
ako, I talked to some friends in Liloan, nag-save man sila water. And in fact, ako, ang among maid sa Labangon, naaman may tangke, nag-save, nakasustenar man gyud. So, nganong kanang pag-andam ba? Pag-andam, pag-amping. Like, for example, ako long time ago, we used to collect water, di ba? May mga sandayong atong mga balay. Niabot na ang mga kuan, wala na. I really think we have to go back to rain collecting instead nga mahimong baha, no? mahimong baha ng ulan, we should
That's a good.
collect it, and that should be our water. In fact, kanang usa ka SM nga do sa Manila sa Masinag, naghimo na silang underground water basin na mukatch basin ba sa baha, so that I think we have to change our ways. Mura man tag ako yung kuan, mura man tag pirmi matang makuan, murag ma-surprise ngano ingon nana nga kuan. I was thinking, pila man ni ka Baguio ni abot nganong hapla mangyapon ta, di ba? Pero as I always say, makabangon tagdali og magtinabangay ta, naay mo tabang, di ba? So,
Ma'am, pero is it well, you've seen, I think you've tracked bansad sa kanang bagyo, no, in the past sa Cebu, unya hangtod karon, unya unsa ang amo ang how we unsa man ni reacted to it, but
no,
would you say ma'am we got better ba, or what yung improvement?
Di man ta mo tuo nga climate change, there are no more extreme events. So di ba, ang rainfall katong sa gaton taas man, so na mahumok na mga yuta mo ng landslide sa Ambo, sa Umpong, mo man tabo sa Ulysses. So ako, I think mura magdako kay natong pagsalig sa Ginoo nga tabangon ta, pero di ba sa Tagalog may sila, nasa tao, nasa Diyos ang awa, nasa tao ang gawa. So I would say we have to look at our practices. That's why ingon ko unsa may kinaihan nato nga kiniadto og mag-andam man kita, mag-andam tag pagkaon, mag-andam tag tubig. Unya o man ta ka kuan nga ang elektrisidad mawala niya mo nag ang sila gasolina, no, imbak gasolina na ano. So I really think na sa resilience, one indicator nga you're resilient is redundancy of system. So for example, sa energy, dapat hindi lang kuan usa ang atong pagsuon. Dapat we should have renewable, we should have solar and other kind of sources of energy. Unya, kuan ka na ganing sa food, sa tubig. I mean, nahibong kung anong some people were not really, but long pila ka semana una nibalik ang imong tubig, Heidi?
Ko ante ma'am, dungan sa kuryente ma'am.
Murag so pila man to ka weeks?
Murag more than 2 weeks, almost a month.
So that's why given that dapat we should prepare na unsa kadaghan ang pagkaon, di ba? Unsa ka tubig kay sa amo kay kanang ang among ramang media permi, so we have a big tanke sa napaigo. Pero that's why for me kanang rain collecting and also storing water should be kasi if you are dependent on electricity to run our water system, ay pilay gyud ta, di ba? So I think ang lesson sa Odette is that we should have a redundancy of system. So our energy should not only come from one system. And so our water. For example, kadung giingon sa among principal sa Catmo National High School na gravity fed man sila. So continuous ang water nila compared to other places na why electricity so di makaran. So it's really multiplicity of sources but connected, coordinated, calibrated, di ba?
I think during the Odette ma'am, one of our problems is that why it took time also for us to rise is because ang kuryente ato ma'am puwerte jud, as in wag tang tanan kay daghan kay trees nga tumba ingana niya wa jud naka-anticipate that these trees will actually are very near the lines ba.
No, abi ni mong natumba sila kay pagtanom ana dili lawom unya dili sa kay ang native indigenous species katong sa baybay landslide, no, ila man gi-document nga katong may landslide were planted to invasive species, whereas katong mga party nga were na gitanuman og native and indigenous species wa man siya makuan sa wa man humok ang yuta nakakapot man ang kuan. Ang kuan bitaw kana ganing asa nga ni ang
Gamot.
roots bitaw. Oh, ang gamot. Oo. So
Kanang well, the way you answered it ba makaingon gyud ta nga connected gyud ang tanan, no? So from
connected kay for example, I'll give you an example. I will not mention kung ano. I built the beach house in 2002 because I thought, may sakit ako time. Akala ko, mamatay na ako. So I said, I don't want to die here in Manila, no? I also don't want to die in the city. So sabi ko sa brother ko, gawan mo ko ng beach house. So, the coastline was far away pa, no? But, by 10 years later, ang mga bus, ang kuan, napuno na ang akong kuan ang akong say nga ni ang wall na ko nya. One day I came home, nakita ko dito ni adto ko dito kay once a year man amo gamiton for our union. Nakita na ako may muhon 20 meters from the road ngadto sa akong property. Ingkon sa man ni DPWH wants to extend the widen the road 20 meters ngadto, di ba? Ang rule is 10 meters on each side, di ba? Di 20 meters ngali sa seaside kay kuan kuno daghan man displace ngadto ang sa mountainside. So ako sang giingnan, will you choose? Ingko by 2030 basig maabot na diha ang tubig. So mamili lang ka, ma-displace ka sa dagat or imo tong i-displace ang mga tao dito kay nagbalay sila din nga dapat hindi balay. So I mean, I really believe that nawala na bitaw ang atong connectedness to nature, how nature behaves. How kita, I mean, muna nagka-disaster ta because we are on the way of the path of the typhoon, di ba? So, pareha ng bahaan. You are on the way, di ba? There's a disaster because it hits an unprepared population. You are in harm's way, di ba? So, because I always tell my friends in Vietnam and other places, I want to charge you buffer fees. Because we are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, pag abot na nga to sa Vietnam dyan, mohinay na, di ba? Landfall, mohinay naman na. I mean, let's just accept it. We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and we are a factory of disasters. And I say, we are a factory of disasters because we, the workers in the factory, are not doing the correct thing. We're not reducing the risk, So, I really think kanang atong mga batasan ba kiniadto ba nga I remember sa Yolanda, no, I have friends in the north. Their house is half native, yung kanang house on stilts babita niya kuan ka na ganing kanang bamboo and the other half is modern. Before Yolanda higot na nila. Mumanahimuon kinaad sa mga tao, di ba? Higot, gano'n. But, and you know why it survived? Because naamay kaagian ng hangin. Lahos-lahos man ang hangin. Kato, wa naman yung mga agian ng hangin. So, that's why I always say, let the water pass, let the wind pass unimpeded. We are on the way, so dapat I think we have to think about our architecture. For example, glass is very delikado na.
Mabuto.
Delikado ba? So, what I'm saying is, obserbahan nato nga ang hangin, ang tubig, muagi gid na. Unyagi mo ng pugnan na mubuto, di ba? So, I think, I really think that, we have hunahunahon na ito. Sa mga itong gipanghimo. That's why I always say, if nature thrives, we also survive and thrive. Pero kita na focus na manggudta nga kita. We're so extractive. But our relationship with the environment should be balanced. You extract. I mean, like, tanawa ko na atong mga bukid, daghang quarrying. So, of course, ang runoff, ang siltation, di ba?
Muna, ang question sa na ma'am, nanong gitugutan na sila. But anyway, ma'am, we have other questions coming in from our audience. So maybe we can go through them. Let's have our next question, please.
Oo,
This comes
nasobrahan.
from
Oo.
Vince Derrick Joaquino. He says, "Good day, ma'am. What can we say about the recent campaign in social media with the display of hashtags such as hashtag
Oh,
let the earth breathe? Are we hopeful enough as ordinary Cebuanos? As such, we have the chance to mitigate these problems regarding climate change thanks to digitalization and education."
well,
I think saying, ma'am, nga, does digitalization and education help in
I
educating?
well, what I'm hoping is that, I remember many years ago there was Nature had this advertisement. I said Julia Roberts was speaking like Nature, and she said, "I will be always here, long before
Mm,
you are gone."
mm.
People don't realize na, nature as a life and a system of its own. And what we have done was, insert into their system and we extract. So when you say let it breathe, I'll give you an example. Diha sa daplin sa kuan sa baybayon sa kanang kuan bitaw, di ba? Ikahapon mo hunas, no? Nya daghang
Mm.
manginhas. And I was always struck na every day they are gathering all these panginhas and these shells. Nagkunaon ako, how can it regenerate? Og everyday manghinhas ka, di ba? It's the same. Sige kag kuan, extract so much kuan. That's why I think I like what the old question says. Let the earth breathe. Let That's why kanang marine sanctuary, kinanglan dili ka mangisda din ha. O,
Oh,
pinahon sa
ipa-breathe on sa.
spawning season. But I will not mention the town. Ingon tong maid sa akong amiga nga, oh, nanguha na po sila dito sa sanctuary kay dapat kanong panahon na kanang isda endangered na. Dapat dili na mo appear diha sa merkado. But the fact na, like for example, kanang mulmol is very important. Parrotfish, very important kay sila man ay mulimpyo bitaw sa kuan sa coral reef. Sila na mo limpyo, mutabang na sila pag, for the growth of the coral reef. Unya, ang ilang ipot, ang ilang kuan ba, kay, kuan man nila, i-digest, that becomes the white sand. So I was telling people, oy kanang parrotfish, which is colorful, dapat din na endangered na. Ingon sila, lami man kaayo, day, ang tinuwang mulmul. Lami. So, I was thinking, unta, mag-breed ta so that naatay fingerlings nga i-replenish, di ba? We should, and also the Marine Sanctuary, you should really take it seriously. But people do not think that, it's really, why don't you fish during the spawning season? Because that is how you regenerate, di ba? Pero
Yeah.
balance. Balance, basically, and thank you for that question, because I really think we look at the environment as if it's forever. Na-imbalance na because we're extracting so much and it cannot regenerate. It
Amo
cannot
na ni ma'am.
uh,
It's really again the connectivity, no, that the more the population rises, the more the need, and muna wala na time to breathe ang ato ang
yeah, but
kinaiyahan, ma'am.
para sa di ba sa ako sang tanaw, we consume so much. You know what my lesson during lockdown? Actually, you don't need very much. But we are
Mm.
very wasteful. I think part of the
Mindset.
accountability
Yeah.
is really to accept that we are very wasteful. And I'm thinking, my mother is the first environmentalist and my father, because, we depend on coconuts, no? And then my mother and father said, oh, kanang mga kahoy niya, because we have a big orchard, and kanang mga kahoy niya, mga lubi niya, mabuhi managwa mo. Pero kamo, di mo mabuhi. I mean, we have to think in these terms that we have to coexist because our existence is dependent. I mean, di ba, kanindot yun na Heidi. Ang atong hininga, I tell my students, ang atong mga hininga, atong mga utot, atong mga carbon, may pagkaon sa mga plants. Unya, ang ilang fresh, ang oxygen, is what we breathe. Isn't that a very good symbiosis? But what have we done? We have polluted the air with the black carbon. So I really think we have to restore the balance.
Wow,
Really, like,
restore the balance.
yeah, we have to restore the balance. Kay, I was lecturing to the DOST Gender and Environment Forum last month, and the speaker before me was talking about pollution, and I was struck by what she said. That an artist was saying, there is so much pollution in this world that there is no place except your lungs. O di ba? Di ba, Kuya na Heidi?
Yeah.
there there is no place for the pollution but your lungs. So it's really imbalance. It's really give and take. I think we've taken so much from nature, as well as we input into nature the not good things, di ba?
Wow.
Siraon nato diha ako. So balance, I think.
That's the key word here, ma'am. We have to restore balance. We'll go to our next question, ma'am. We still have questions from
Oh,
our audience. Moni ang ikatulo. Here's the third one. Let's just show. Okay. This is done?
recent, no, sunod.
Here from Benjamin Kapuyan. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Does Cebu invest more? Should Cebu invest more in solar panels? Kay kuan man good sa Bagyong Odette, very expensive kuno kay ang solar powered lights times 2 sa original. Of course kay in the time of bagyo
Okay,
mo to siya.
because of the demand. But I just came, last week I was in Negros because I validated last year the Alliance of Wetland Conservation and they won, no? And so I was saying na, Gov, I'm really like, because supposedly I read in the papers that Negros Occidental is 70% renewable. So that means 30% lang sila dependent. So I really feel that saan na tayo nakalimot mo? Saan tayo question na?
Can we flash again? Kuan ma'am,
Oh,
should we go solar ba?
no, I think I will not say go solar, but really we should redundancy of system nga. We should not be relying on one system, but multiple system. Kung mapalya ang usa, naatay kuan. Mura bag so I think Negros has solar, they also have hydro, they also have biogas. I think I really believe that we should invest in multiple sources of energy. Um, and og makuan na mo barato naman na og so many people will buy, di ba?
Yeah.
So so I think we
So
say
redundancy is key, ma'am. It's not
yeah,
really nga to just use solar,
oo,
but also we
it
must find
it
other
should be
ways.
multiple
Oh,
sources so that
yes.
kung mapalya ang usa na kailain.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So let's go to our. Is this the last question? That was the last question,
oh,
ma'am.
very good.
Very
Okay.
good. That means they understood everything. So thank you very much for all our the audiences here that participated, no, and
Uh,
sent their questions. We have our trivia, but our trivia will come after our webinar. So please stay tuned
can
for that
but
as well.
but can I say something? I really
Yes,
believe,
ma'am.
I really believe that Cebu is such a valuable place. If you look at Cebu, it's like a shrimp, di ba? It's a narrow strip. Yeah, it's like a shrimp. We only have very little plain, and we should value our uplands because that is our watershed. That is we should value our uplands. Pero ginalbo man nato eh. We should green our uplands so that we will be the trees and the mangroves, they absorb the carbon. So efficient. So I really believe that mahalon nato, ampingon nato ang atong mga kuan nga environmental heritage nato. Kay kuan nindot kaya, for example, sa Cebu, no, nag-ano ang I remember in the 1990s the coastal properties were not so expensive yet. But after then everybody is most people from the city or from external are buying the coastal properties. na sometimes the locals cannot anymore access the baybayin. I really believe that we have, just because, you have your resort there, it doesn't mean na imo na lang. Ato manitanan. So I really believe that we have to care. Um, it is a common good. Water, coast, it's a common good. Like in Hawaii, I remember, ang baybayon, di gyud nimo ma-fence because it's a common domain. I really think now we have to look at our environmental resources, and we should balance not so much. So I would say ang pingon nato, mahalon nato ang atong lugar, dili ta mag-abuso kay mobalik man na sa imo, ang gaba di magsaba. So og nag-abuse ka din sa nature, ay ikaw ra ang magabaan. Tanan man. I mean, if you think in terms of gaba, nagkunon ako, mo na ni, because we think we are so progressive, we have all this many buildings and all of these things, we can do everything. O tingnan mo,
Okay.
gihampak ka ni Odette, di noon ka once ka diha nga wa kay internet, wa kay na. So I think amping, atimanon, mahalon, okay? I want
And
everyone.
And with that, ma'am, we'd like to, that will be how we will end our webinar, ma'am, with the thought nga amping no ati manun gyud ang atong kinaihan. And with that, we'd like to thank Dr. Emma Porio, and ma'am would like to show to you our appreciation through this certificate. Can we flash the certificate for ma'am? This certificate of appreciation is given to Dr. Emma E. Porio for sharing her expertise and time as resource speaker of the webinar, The Cebuano Amidst Disasters during the Gabi sa Kabilin 2022 online activity for April. It's given today, 29th of April 2022 at the Rafi Kabilin Center, Eduardo Aboitiz Street, Cebu City. Signed, Rafi President and CEO, Ms. Amaya Aboitiz, Chancellor. Ma'am, we'll send this to you. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
You
And
know, I want to say here, my department, we owe a lot to Eduardo Advoites. And also, by the way, the coastal cities at risk sits in the Abuetes Sandbox Zone in Arete. Heidi and Milka, I want to invite you to Arete. Arete is where we have all those, Arete is supposed to unite from the physical and social sciences, transform it into art forms that we can communicate better. So my SICAR sits in the Abuete Sandbox Zone. So I'm basically doing this because I think I owe a lot to Bobby Abuetis and to the Abuetises. Do you know that I did my first street-based ethnography because when I was in San Carlos, the Abuetises asked me if I can look at all those beggars there. I mean, I remember the patriarch telling me, I want to know where these beggars are coming from, why they are here, how many are in the family, because they did not want to just give limos, but they want to be developmental. So I owe very much to the Abuetis Foundation. Thank you very much, and especially to Bobby Abuetis. Remember, Heidi, you came and
yes,
accompanied
I did, ma'am.
Bobby to give us the keynote address. So thank you very much. It's for you and the others and the Abueti Rafi that I'm doing this in honor of the Abuetis' contribution to Cebu development. Thank you.
I'll relay your what you said, ma'am, to the Aboitises. Thank you very much, ma'am, and I hope we can visit you
And
there in
and
the.
I hope we can partner because when I was assessing the SRP, when I was interviewing the people there at the back of the SM City and all that stuff, there are mangroves pa there, and the Abuetes was sponsoring a livelihood project. They were getting alimango from Leyte in order that they will have crab project there. So I hope I can connect to those initiatives, the livelihood projects, ecosystems based adaptation na tayo, Heidi. We
I
work
hope
with
you have already the contact of our head for our 123 program, our biodiversity program, ma'am, and I'm
yes,
pretty sure
because
you can work
I want
something
to
out.
connect. I want to connect the Marine Sanctuary at the back of St. Joseph Parish and Kilometer 47. I am engaging the local high school, the science teachers, to use the marine sanctuary as their laboratory to inventory the flora and fauna. And
Wow.
also I want to connect with USC Marine Laboratory to really work together to look at your backyard as your laboratory. Also because on top of that, that's where we are having also the arboretum, planting the trees. So I hope, by the way, I wrote about Cebu cinnamon in the book Philippine Native Trees Up Close and Personal because of what you had there in the nursery. Di ba? You have nursery. That's where I got the Cebu cinnamon. And really, I wrote about the Cebu cinnamon because I read in a newspaper that a German botanist discovered Cebu cinnamon. Then I said to myself, why should that farming botanist discover when we were growing up, kaningag, if you have a stomach ache, pakit-kiton lang kag kuan, kanila, di ba? So, I mean, what I'm saying is I owe a lot to the Ramon Abuetes Foundation. So, thank you.
Thank you again, ma'am. And with that, we will close our webinar. Before we leave, we'd like to thank also all of our GSK partners for 2022. And I'd like to also thank the GSK Organizing Committee, Melka, Renren, Sig, Mac, and Verla, and ably assisted by our stakeholder management officer, Chad, our link to the schools. And again, we'd like to remind you about our trivia, which will come after this webinar. And for those who want to get an e-certificate for participating in our webinar, we shall be posting the evaluation form right after this webinar, and then we will close the evaluation. We will take away the evaluation form by midnight. So please answer them between now and then. And we'd like to remind you as well of our May 27 activity, another webinar, and this will be on the Cebuano Amidst epidemics, and we have invited Professor Francis Dialogo to speak on this. And of course, we'd like to thank everyone who is part of our webinar this afternoon. Daghan kaayong salamat, and we hope to see you on May 27. Bye everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time and for participating in our webinar today. We hope to see you again next month for another Gabi sa Kabilin online activity to appreciate and experience Cebu's culture and heritage. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, daghang salamat!